going to start? Okay. Call the meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. All members are present. Have the agenda in front of you. Are there any changes?
No.
Okay. Council? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Dave. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Approval of the minutes of the February 17th, 2016 regular meeting. Are there any changes, corrections, clarification that is needed on those minutes? Hearing or seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the February 17th, 2016 regular meeting?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Diane,
I'll second that.
second by Keith. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Now is our public open forum. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the council on anything other than the public hearing that we do have tonight? Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the council? Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the council? Seeing no one, our public open forum is now closed. We will then move on to our public hearing we have tonight for the Oak Street public hearing. We will recess the regular meeting and we will open the public hearing. We have a public hearing before us this evening regarding the Oak Street improvements from Park Road to Sinclair Lewis Avenue. It is our intention that everyone has the opportunity to be heard. If you wish to speak, please sign in on the sign-up sheet at the back of the room. The procedure is as follows. Presentation by staff, followed by questions of staff, then public input. Raise your hand. When recognized by the mayor, approach the podium and state your name and address for the record. State your comments and position. No one will be allowed to speak a second time until everyone has had a chance to be heard. First, we will hear questions for clarification. Secondly, public in favor of the proposal. Third, public speaking against the proposal. After everyone who wishes to speak has had the opportunity to be heard, the hearing will be closed. After closure of the public hearing, the council will deliberate and take action as appropriate. Members of the audience do not participate in the council's discussion unless a majority of the council concedes to hear additional information or questions. The hearing is now in session.
Okay.
Keith?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First of all, I'd like to apologize to you and to the public here that we unfortunately have a technical issue with our projector, so we're not able to show you the information that we wish to show you. So I'll do the best I can to describe everything as you know, the improvements as well as the costs and all. So it'll be probably a little more lengthy than normal to try to go through that, but I'll try to go through it and answer any questions that anybody has as we go through. So this is the public hearing for the Oak Street reconstruction project. This project is meant to repair and rehabilitate 2 blocks of Oak Street from Sinclair Lewis up to Park Avenue. It is in bad shape, especially the southerly block thereof. A lot of deterioration of the pavement itself, a lot of deterioration of the curb and gutter, the sidewalk areas. We don't have very uniform cross slopes through there, so it's just a host of issues, as well as the utilities that are underground, which most people can't see, certainly the public can't see, are also very old as well and in need of replacement. The northerly block is actually in a little better shape as it relates to the roadway portions thereof, but the underground utilities are old and are needing of repair, and we do want to salvage as much of that roadway as we can to keep the cost down. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I was going to show you this picture that I have. If you could see this, it'd be a great picture to show the what we have out there. But unfortunately, you can't. Have a wonderful picture of the roadway. Those of you who live along it know that there's a lot of patching, a lot of alligator cracking. Those kinds of things are going out there. That's all indicative of the roadway is falling apart. It's gone beyond its usable existence, and it's time for rehabilitation. The improvements, and I'll have to describe these to you, the improvements really are to I'll go by block, I guess. The southerly block from Sinclair up to 2nd, that'll be a complete reconstruct, which means all of the pavement itself, the curb and gutter, the sidewalks, the utilities underneath, everything in that block would be replaced through there. They are aging. We have different types of curb. There's some concrete curb. There's actually some granite curb in there still, which harkens back for a long time for some of that granite curb, for those of you who might remember pieces of that around. So that's going to be all replaced. The utilities through there, replacing their sanitary sewer that goes from 2nd Street and it goes upstream, if you will, or flows downhill towards 2nd. That would be all replaced. There's water main in there that's also aging, that will be replaced, as well as the sewer and water services for those adjacent property owners that do receive benefit from those. The northerly block is primarily more utility replacement. Actually, the curb was done, I believe it was 1999, right, if I recall, through when some of that was done. So it's not terribly old, we're 17 or so years old through there, so it's not, so some of it's in pretty good shape. The intersections itself are a little bit in poor shape, but the rest of it's in pretty decent shape. Unfortunately, the pavement is not in very good shape. For most of it's been there's some alligator cracking, some pretty good longitudinal and transverse cracks that are going on through there. But once again, the sidewalk is spalling, so it's on the east side, not in real good shape. That hasn't weathered as well as we would normally hope curb and gutter would be. But the utilities would be replaced. There's sanitary sewer that goes up that roadway, as well as some services that go up. There's a long service that goes all the way to that east property up to the north through there, as well as one that goes across the road to the west. So those will all be replaced. Those are old, some galvanized services through there. So those are really the extent of the improvements that would be proposed through there. Cost for the projects, I know you can't see this, we'll have to just go through them. Sanitary sewer is a little over $59,000. Water main is about $44,600. I'm rounding to the thousands here. Storm sewer is $34,300. Services are $31,700. And street improvements are $184,600. For a total of $354,400 are the estimates for that. The breakdown of that based on city costs is a little over, it's about $109,500 for that. PUC costs, which is the utility portions underneath, are $103,800. The assessable for the preliminary assessments are $141,139, of which the city is actually, because of the parking lot, is actually part of that as well. So those are the assessable costs. Those assessments are broken down by cost per front foot for the streets, and their cost per each for the sanitary and the water services. And then for storm sewer, it's basically by the area and the land use type of the adjacent properties. We call it by a runoff coefficient times the area, essentially. Those numbers are, for the storm sewer, are 0.2177, so about 22 cents per square foot. For the storm sewer, sanitary sewer service is estimated to be $13,000. Water service, $18,000. I'm rounding a little bit here. And streets are $80.26 per front foot are the assessments for those. Now, when we get through this, there's still some final things to be looked at. There may be some partial credit that would be applied when we get towards to the final assessments for the existing street, curb and gutter, for especially that northerly block. So there'll be some things in there that will be looked at, and also some of that's related to the PUC. Some of those costs will probably get reassigned a little bit towards the PUC as well. But until we get to that final final. We're actually just got some information as relates to services on that block, and so we're figuring out whether that part of the curb can actually be saved or not. Those are the types of things that would actually be utility-related cost, so we have to determine where they're going to get assigned to at this point. So the assessments, I would look at those as kind of more of a worst-case scenario at this point, and some of those perhaps would get better with some credits as we get to a final assessment. So I do have, and hopefully I believe everyone's gotten some preliminary assessment numbers, is that correct? So everyone should have those numbers. I won't go through them. I do have them with, and we can discuss them with if there's any individuals as we go through, but I believe you've got, the numbers basically range from, what, about $6,600 up to, I think the largest one is about $17,000, I believe, is the largest assessment. So that's kind of the range. And those are related to lot size, obviously, and the type of lot those are. So that's really all I have for prepared verbal presentation. So with that, I'll turn it back to the mayor for any questions.
Council, have any questions on the storm sewer? Are we planning on putting new storm sewer in basically from St. Clair Lewis all the way down? Or?
Yes, I'm glad you, without the picture, I'm sorry. Yes, there is some storm sewer in there. It basically goes from 2nd Street and Oak intersection. We do have a stub. The longest stub actually goes to the south and goes into the parking lot area. And that's because right now it drains out through a little drain that goes underneath the sidewalk. We have issues with that freezing up, and it doesn't really work well, especially in the spring. So this is a way to correct that situation that's out there. The rest of it is things that are just in the intersection. Curb leads for catch basins, those kinds of things is really the only storm sewer that is occurring through there.
So if we eliminated the storm sewer, how much money the water's been flowing that way for years?
Yeah, we'd save some of this. We may save potentially 15 to maybe as much as 20,000, I would say, could be saved if we didn't go through there and just tried to leave it essentially the way it is and live with that situation. But I'd say it's probably in that 15, maybe 20 at the high end through there.
Okay. I know on sanitary sewer, it states that, most of that is all clay pipe and the manholes are brick.
Yep.
So basically it's way overdue on being replaced.
Yeah, absolutely. It's old, and it's definitely reached its time where it's time to replace it. The road's bad. We would never want to, because they're both in bad shape, we wouldn't want to do the road and not do the utilities underneath. It's not cost effective for us to do it that way, because then you're into in situ replacements. They cost more to do it. So if you're tearing out the road, this is the time to do the utilities for sure. And they certainly have reached their longevity.
I had a question for you. How do you figure out the storm sewer rate? Is that
It's
cost,
it's the cost then divided by the area, the drainage area that drains to those facilities.
Okay, so cost of the project. So if you save $20,000.
Yep, that would be saved to, and proportionally. Remember, the city is also a part of that as well, but you'd save that way.
Okay, and when you say the area that drains, you mean the area within the project that drains there?
Correct.
All right. Does that mean you've accounted for somebody whose water might drain the other way?
Yeah, we've only looked at those, those areas that actually drain to the facilities.
I don't know about this particular area, but if somebody's lot sloped away from the street, obviously their water isn't in there. Does that mean they're not included?
Right, and you also might only get portion. And we've had this in other projects where maybe half the lot goes towards those and the other goes someplace else.
That's what if that was the case, they wouldn't be being charged for water.
Correct.
It's not going that way anyway.
Correct. It's for that which drains to it based upon, the elevations of the land.
Any other questions from the council? Just one on that northerly block. What are we planning on doing? Are we putting sanitary sewer in new, and then
Sanitary sewer and
operating service lines?
Yep, so new service lines, new sanitary sewer. Because we're going down the middle of the road, the majority of the pavement is gone. So it makes sense to do the rest of the road. It actually didn't hold up real well, so for its age, it's not doing as well as normally we would like. But because we're tearing up 2/3 of it at least in order to do the sanitary, it doesn't really make any sense to leave that last little bit. Plus, at the very north end, there'd be right now it's just bituminous going across. The drainage is from east to west. We don't normally want to have water flowing in those bituminous valley gutters. They erode away. So we'd actually be putting a concrete apron through there as well, in that north end.
Okay, so basically the people that have got just service lines going up to the water main, we would just replace them?
Yep, from up to right away to the main.
Okay.
Yep.
At whose cost? Since it's a service line, basically, it would be theirs, or
The service lines are the homeowner's responsibility.
even if they're in the street?
Those portions that are in the street, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
It's only when we get to a main that we don't do it. As example, on the 4th Street project, there was a long service in one, actually at the east end, which came off and went way down the road and into a property, and I think it went 150 feet thereabouts, and that's all a service. We don't own that.
I know one of the things is this project's been talked about, I think this is the 3rd time. The last how many years?
2013 was the last time, so 2.5 years ago.
2.5 years ago. We've been discussing it and putting it off, but it's getting to the point where we're digging it up every summer trying to fix leaks, and it's getting to be more of an expense. And I'm sure everyone that's on the project scale, when they seen the notice, went, oh no, here we go again. But it's one of them things I think we're kind of get our back up against the wall to a certain extent, or costs are going to get worse. Does anyone else have any questions of staff? Otherwise, I will open it up to the public. Hearing none, thank you, Keith. Is there anyone here that would like clarification as far as the scope of the project? Questions about timelines? You want to come up to the podium and state your name and address, please?
Lynette Schmitz, we own the apartments, 220 Oak Street, north of the public parking lot. I guess when he was talking about not everybody would need like the drain sewer, or some might still be intact, is that price going to be just for that owner that wouldn't have to pay that, or would that just be reflected and divided among all the owners? Certain parts that didn't have to be replaced, you're saying?
Yeah. Let me just, are you referring to the services? Is that what
Yeah.
and would it, well, it would be replaced from the right-of-way into the road. So that's the estimate that you heard. And that would go against the parcel. So if you have apartments and, you are the owner of that, so how you recoup those dollars obviously is up to you. Say if there's 2 or 3 units in there, how you recoup them. But we assess it against the parcel, so you as an owner.
Okay, but you're saying not everything needs to be replaced. You might get to areas that it doesn't need replacement.
Well, I was referring to
That's-
the road in those cases, like in that north block, that would be probably the curb and gutter, maybe some portions of the sidewalk up through there. But all the utilities at this point are proposed to be replaced, so the sewer and water services would be replaced.
Okay, so on the north end, the savings that's in front of that house or parking lot or whatever and stuff, would that be divided among everybody that's paying, or just be a extra less money that one person would pay?
Yep. It's based upon the front footage. So therefore, if, as an example, say there's a lot on that northerly block that maybe, let's just say, only gets half of its curb replaced, they would pay based upon that lineal footage that was replaced and not necessarily their entire lot.
Okay, so it's going
Per front foot that's.
what they're doing?
Right, correct.
Okay. And who determines what it needs? Like in front of our apartment, we've got a curb. I don't see anything wrong with our curb, so.
Well, ultimately, it's the council who determines if they want to move forward and what types of things they want to do. They obviously take my recommendations as well as other staff as what we feel is in shape that can be salvaged and cannot be. We also never want to have a patchwork quilt. So normally, even though
That's what I was wondering.
even though there's, say there's 10% of 100% of that side that looks good, it's not worth saving that 10%. It actually costs us more money to do that. We were better off replacing. But if there's decent stretches that are good, absolutely, we try to save those. But, that first block most of that is really not salvageable. We have planned to replace everything in that first block, that southerly block.
Okay. And I guess my other question is, are the homeowners the only ones that are paying on this? Is the city absorbing anything, or it's a pretty big chunk of money for us or whatever that?
Well, I can answer part of that, and sorry I didn't actually say this in the presentation. Storm sewer-wise, the city picks up half of those costs. So that's a portion of the cost that's picked up. The utilities, the PUC actually pays for those portions, so that even though that still is part of the city, but it's a sort of a separate entity, they pay for those costs. So there are things that the city and utility do pay for.
Okay, and is that reflective in what's showing on our sheet with them already paying it?
Yes, that's already been removed, that's correct.
Okay. And then how do you consider that us homeowners are supposed to come up with 10, 20,000 when it's not even, like us, we're not using it, others is vacant properties are not being used?
Well, let me kind of step through in general the assessment process. Ultimately, it'll be the council to decide the length of time. Essentially, it gets assessed over years at a certain interest rate. Now, Vicki might be able to say what's kind of the average that we've done. Normally, it's 10 years. The council has done longer in other cases, but this is a short one. I suspect they'd probably be looking at 10, but ultimately, that's the council's decision. Interest rates recently have been, 4% interest.
Does that get put on your taxes then?
It gets put on your taxes.
You pay it
Yep.
every 6 months or whatever and
Yep.
stuff with the property tax?
Yeah. You can pay, a portion or all of it off before it goes onto your taxes.
We're not rich,
yeah.
none of us.
But those-
Nobody has that much money just sitting around.
But those are available for, you can do that. You can pay it, off early as you go through the assessment, through that period as well. So it's kind of like a loan essentially, and it goes on to your property taxes. So you
Okay.
pay it twice a year.
Well, I guess to me, it's awful high, the cost or whatever for each person. I don't know how others do. We don't have that extra money or whatever and stuff to pay. And even if you put it on our tax bill for 10 years or whatever, we're still paying $10,000, $12,000 for a road that everybody's using. That I don't think, like you said, water, and I don't know how much public utilities is paying, if that was taken off. I don't know what that total cost was or anything, but just to me, it seems awful high for each homeowner to have to pay that amount for a street that everybody uses.
The PUC actually is picking up roughly a little less than a third of the project cost.
Okay,
And that's just for the utilities.
yeah. Is there any other money available to help pay for it, or?
Vicki, is there any other, I know there's hardship.
Well, you mean like as far as to help somebody with their assessment?
Right.
We have the hardship one for disabilities and elderly,
Right.
but that wouldn't really apply in a commercial instance.
But there's any other programs or anything available, money to the city that could be used for it, or?
We don't have it available right now, not for utilities, and that's what they consider this.
And we don't have it available right now either for utilities, but yet you're still charging us.
Well, unfortunately, it gets to that point where things have to be replaced, and like it or not, you happen to be the one that
Well,
lives there.
and then too, like us, we've got an abandoned alley or whatever between us and the next owners there north or whatever, which is a vacant building now or whatever and stuff. Is the city picking up the alleys there? And same with on the other side, like going into Sporties and stuff behind there? Is that the city's portion or divided amongst us
Right.
owners?
The only portion that's assessed is that which is to the individuals, is that which is actually your front footage of your property. So if you don't own that property, it is not included in your assessments. That would be if it's public right-of-way or,
Yeah.
that becomes, so it's,
So are they out there measuring, or are they going from your plats?
it's actually from the plat, so that with
Okay.
the detail of your property that you own.
Okay. Do you know what that comes to per foot, or what each person is paying? I know you were saying it was a certain amount.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned that, what those per foot, and they're actually, if you have that sheet, it's at the top of the sheet.
Okay.
Did you?
Yeah, we just got it tonight when we came in, so
Yeah.
I haven't really.
It's
looked
it's at the very top, the rates, and, it's a per front foot, per each for the certain utilities.
I didn't bring my old lady glasses so I could read it.
I didn't bring my old man glasses either, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to read it.
The one thing that I want to point out, thank you, Lynette, unless you got other questions.
No.
Okay.
Is there anything I didn't cover? Okay,
All right,
thank you.
thank you. One thing I want to point out, I think the cost of the project since the last time we revisited, we put it off and figured we'd try to patchwork this thing. The cost of the whole project went up probably about 6% in the last 2.5 years. I think
That is correct. It was 6
you know,
point something
So
percent.
basically, if we put it off again to the point where we really have a problem and we're fixing it, we have, the price is only gonna get more.
Right.
It's, the cost of construction's not going down. Price of materials and everything else hasn't gone down, so I don't know what, this is right now, probably the cheapest it's ever gonna get. And these are worst-case scenarios, like Keith's pointed out.
Right. You're right. In general, for the council and for the public, construction costs go up about 2.5% to 3% every year. So it just gets more and more expensive, and that's just related to material costs, labor costs, those kinds of things. So that's, it's been that way for years and years and years. So unfortunately, it doesn't get any cheaper. It kind of is actually slightly more than inflation has been, at least in recent years. So therefore, you're sort of going backwards as it relates to your buying power. But historically, over time, I think our inflation rate is roughly 2.5% as well. So it's, if you look at a longer period of time, it sort of keeps up with inflation pretty closely. But it happens to be a little upside down right now, but.
Is there anyone else here that would like clarification on anything that's been talked about? You must come to the podium, state your name.
Mike Wood, I live down there in 119. Is there going to be water and sewage the whole time that these guys are tearing up this road?
I could address it. In general, the answer is yes, for the vast majority of the time. The only time you'd be out of sewer or water is when we're actually doing the services and that into your house. And normally what we do, like with water, is we actually provide temporary lines, so you have water. It's since we've done many projects where, other sewer and water lines are being replaced, it's only a matter of usually hours where you're actually out of water or
Because the
sewer.
wife's handicapped, she can't be, she'd have to get up like in the morning, run down to the bathroom, down to the back gas
Yep.
station, go to the bathroom, and you gotta have sewage and water.
Well, in those cases, we would work with the landowners to say what is a good time that we could have that out of the service. And certainly in your case with a handicapped person, we would want to work very closely with you to try and accommodate those needs.
And how long is this gonna take?
It's a pretty small project. This really shouldn't take really more than a couple months from some start to finish.
Because I'm gonna have to park in the Legion parking lot, but if they have something going on in that parking lot, I can't get out and go to work or get out,
In general, with the exception of some isolated times, you will have access to your driveway just like you do now. It will be on gravel roads, so they're not as nice as, at the moment, but you'll have access most of the time to your property. Once again, our inspectors, those who are out in the field, will be working closely with all the landowners as to, hey, we're going to be working here, can you park, on the side street tonight so that you can get out, that kind of thing. So we'll work very closely with
When's this all
folks.
going to start?
Well, assuming it goes forward, this project likely will start late May and be done, by August or early part of August.
All right. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like any clarification to what's been talked about so far?
I have
Go ahead.
one. Regarding the assessment policy, is this a 50% coverage by the city anyway? Is that?
50%.
Let's make sure.
It is on the 50%, and I was just doing the math when she was asking the question of the total project, about 127.5 is assessed, and 226.9 is picked up by the city and the utility.
Right, so that is half of.
So it's like
well,
half of the road, plus the water main and the sewer main is all city or utility.
That's all
And then the other
utilities.
part is 50%, and then we assess the other 50%, plus then they pay for their services,
Right.
individual service lines.
That's what I want to clarify. So the city is paying for half of the road, plus it also pays the assessments on, like, the city parking lot.
And the city parking lot part of it, and then we also pay, like you said, wherever it abuts an alley or wherever
Yeah,
there's no, we pick up
intersections
all the
and- yeah.
areas that there isn't a house fronting it. In the intersection is a good example of that,
Yep.
where there is no abutting property.
If it was a collector road, like collector roads, we actually then pick up some more of those costs, but it's not one of those.
Right.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, like you're saying, the city's picking up 50% of the cost. Is there any instances where they pick up more than that?
We do,
Even for other streets, I mean, there's a homeowner, prices are down, and now you're adding this much, I mean, I can, Tracy Ryan across the street there, I mean, her house has been for sale for how long that you can't get what it's worth. Now that you can have another 15,000 or whatever added to that, it's really a hardship for her too, I'm sure, no?
okay, for the public or TV that didn't hear the questions, I wanted to know whether or not the city has ever picked up more than 50%. We have, which they just stated on a collector road, we have. But this isn't considered a collector road. This is basically a general street. Collector road is where we have other major roads with a lot of traffic all coming into one, like Ash Street was considered a collector road, where there's a lot more traffic than what is on this stretch. So it has happened, but in this case, it would be at the 50%. So, is there anyone else that wants clarification? Otherwise, I will be asking for anyone to speak in favor or against the proposal. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in favor or against the proposal?
I have a letter.
Is there anyone here that would like to speak in favor or against the proposal? Okay, is there you have a letter that needs to be read in?
I have a letter in favor. It says, due to previous commitments, we're unable to attend the public hearing. We know this project needs to be done and should have been done many years ago. They just have a few concerns. They want to have their water and sewer lines replaced to the house. They like the jog in the street from Sinclair Lewis to Second to be straightened out. They want to make sure the curb isn't so high that they can't open the car doors against them, and concerned about the tree in the boulevard that's pushing up a sidewalk. And this is from Scott and Wendy Drobny.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe those issues are all being taken care of.
Yeah, maybe I could just, the curb will be a standard B6 type curb, so there are varying heights through there. We currently don't have that tree to come out, but that can be added in if that's a desire of the council to remove that tree. That could be done. It's in the boulevard area. It could be worked around, but it is one that kind of hangs out. Trees in the boulevard, especially that close, do tend to have some issues with the curb and the sidewalk. So, if the council directed, we could certainly add that to the project. I think there was one other thing I wanted to highlight. Yeah, they talked about a jog in the street. I think we've talked about this before, just for the public. On that southerly block, the east side of the road is going to be a straight shot from Sinclair to the north, which means it's going to be tapering the whole way. So there won't be a straight part and then a jog and then straight again. It'll be straight, but at an angle, if you will, through there. So that's how that's going to work out. The service lines will only be replaced up to the right-of-way. Now, what some residents have done in the past is they'll either work with that contractor or have another contractor come in to replace that from the right-of-way into their home, if that's what they so choose, but that is a private situation. But sometimes the contractor doing the job, you certainly can meet with them and see if you can get a price to do that if someone is wishing to do that kind of thing, or you could have one of the area, plumbers come and do that work. But the city part stops at the right-of-way.
Okay. One question, Keith. How deep are we digging here?
Maximum depth is only about 12 feet. Actually, maybe it's a hair more right at the intersection going into the manhole, but generally it's pretty, what we'd consider fairly shallow stuff.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Council? Staff, anything? Okay.
Let me get the plans over, unless you want.
I guess my question is where you're talking the right-of-way? Where is the right-of-way? The curb or 5 feet in that you consider
Yeah.
the boulevard?
Generally, if you look out there now, it'd be the backside of the sidewalk. That's pretty close to where the right-of-way is at. It's within a foot of the right-of-way.
And is there something that, when they're doing it, that they can assess if it needs to be replaced up to your house as what they consider if it's good, or, I mean, I don't know if ours is still from 1900 or if it's been replaced since then?
Yeah, it is the ability to do that kind of thing. I'm trying to remember if we've done that. Can you recall, Vicki? I don't believe we've done that in the past. There is the opportunity, but I don't believe the council has ever exercised that opportunity before.
Keith, I can speak a little bit on that. If you're talking about the sewer line, if you talk to Paul Hessian at the PUC, they can come over after you have the sewer rotor-rooted. They have a camera that they can feed down there.
Oh.
And
so
that will tell you wherever the roots is, or the roots are, and I believe the cost on that's $50, which is really cheap, and it's a very good, I had them do that to mine. You could see everything.
Right, they can look and see. I mean, if you kind of know you have problems, recurring problems, this might be a time to think about doing the rest.
We haven't had reoccurring problems, but in the future we may. I guess that's why it's like we might as well do it now when the street is done and we're already spending all this other money we don't have.
In your properties, you're nearly to the right-of-way already.
Yeah.
There's very little the extra that would go. But I can't recommend a local plumber, but there's several of them that you may wish to just talk with.
Do you know how expensive that is, or approximately, or?
I really hazard a guess on it. It really depends a lot on the situations, but I would probably engage one of them to or a couple of them to come out and take a look, give you a quote, and see what that might be. Like I said, the contractor who gets.
I would put that name down. Who did you say that came and checks?
It's at Water and Light.
Just go to Water and
Just go to
Light?
PUC, yep.
Okay.
And they can help you with that.
Okay.
Right.
Lynette, I've been quoted before as far as if you were to do it outright, and the street's not already being tore up, to replace from the center of the street to your home would cost about $5,000 to $6,000.
That's true.
Okay.
It's pretty spendy on an individual basis. That's why we certainly get the economy of scale when we have more, even though this is really generally considered a small project, but there still is enough work in there that the prices come down. Yours, it's so short, the contractor who gets the job, you may wish to talk with them and see if they're willing to do something.
The sewer is just going straight down the middle, it's not going
Straight-
up to the sidewalks with new pipes?
Well, there's two parts. There's a lateral, which is the main line of the sewer, and that goes down the center of the street. The services then tee off of those and go up to the right-of-ways going towards the individual properties.
So where they tee off in the middle of the road
Yeah,
or whatever,
right.
that's what
You're
you
right. You actually own from the main to your dwelling, you actually own that and are responsible for
basketball
those
court.
costs. Unfortunately,
I own it.
Unfortunately, you don't own what's on top of
It's
it.
worth something.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that has a final question or comment? If not, we will now adjourn the public hearing and reconvene the regular city council meeting. We have no reports and presentations, which will now bring us into our action items, which is 7A, approve resolution 2016-21, ordering improvement of Oak Street South.
And this one, 7A and 7B kind of go together. 7B is when you're going to be talking about the plans and specs. So I don't know, maybe we want to switch those so you have all your questions answered on the plans and specs before we actually order the improvement, if that kind of makes sense to you.
Yes.
So I'm going to go ahead and let Keith go through the plans with you then.
Once again, I had a dynamite presentation that unfortunately you're not going to be able to see. But I did provide you new copies of the plans, so I'll try to go through some of that in a little bit of detail, and I'm going to kind of hit the highlights and then answer any questions you may have. We may need to go up and actually point some things that I unfortunately can't do on the screen. So as we've talked about what's all going to be replaced, if you should be able, if you page through it, the first few pages in, you should be able to see what the sewer and water, what's going to be replaced through there, essentially everything. There is just the note on the water side because of where the storm sewer is at. We actually are moving the water main on, right at the intersection up here with Sinclair Lewis, moving it from the west side of the road to the east side of the road, so that we're not conflicting with other utilities. Now, if by chance you decide to get rid of the storm,
Keith?
Go ahead.
Before you keep going here.
Yep.
You would normally be referring to these plans, wouldn't you?
I'm referring to those
You have them up
plans,
there
yep.
For those people.
Yep.
Well, it turns out we have two
Yeah.
or more older copies here
Yep.
that they could kind of follow along
Yeah,
with. since we
if
don't
anyone
have
wants to see it, they certainly
Because you
can.
have copies,
I can pass out, does anyone like to see one? Anybody else? These are only slightly different than what the council.
I was going to say, they're different than what we received tonight, correct?
But not much.
Yeah, but not much.
Not enough.
Anyone else? So I'll go through it, what I'm looking at, so I can share with then the public as well as what we're looking at. We're looking at page C 4.01, and that's down, you'll find that page number down in the lower right of the C 4.01. And that shows where these are the mainline utilities where they're being replaced. As I was mentioning, you can see what would be on the left-hand side of the paper. You can see the water main actually jogs over to the east side of the roadway. And the reason for that is the storm sewer, it makes more sense to be coming up that west side of the roadway from the 2nd Street intersection. Now, if the council chooses perhaps not to do that, we may actually be able to keep that water main on that side and go down through there. So that'll be a design change potentially based upon some direction that you would provide on that. But you can see that it's replacing, you can see at the manhole, which is kind of in the center of the page at the bottom. What you're looking at the bottom is a profile view. You can see that manhole is actually reasonably deep. Each of those squares, if you will, are 5 feet. So we're about, 12, 14 feet deep at the deepest, right at the manhole. That would be replaced. We'll also be replacing the lateral lines going east and west from right-of-way to right-of-way so that we're prepared for someday for a Second Street, rehab as well, so we don't have to go back into the intersection, similar to what we've done in other cases. So everything within the intersection will be replaced through there. I would like to note that at that intersection, the streets are actually not in the center, the east-west on Second. The the east side is actually 1.5 feet north of center, and the west side is actually 1.5 feet, approximately, it's 1 point something, south of the center line. So we have a little bit of an offset at that intersection. And we had talked at least, or needs, if there's any direction, if you wish to leave it as is. In that case, in the future, when Second's done, we'd end up, if we want to put the street back in the center, we'd end up having to redo those radiuses to push them out, so there'd be some redo costs to do that. If we did it now and put that intersection, just the intersection where it would need to be, then we'd have to make a short transition to tie back into where the curb is now on Second. So it's kind of a, do we do it now or do we do it later kind of a situation if you're concerned about that. Normally we like to keep the roads in the center so that's equal from one side to the other, but that is one issue that we have at that intersection, and we can have some questions and discuss that here as we kind of complete. So you can see the sanitary sewer through there. The next page, which is a C6.01, that shows the water as well as the storm sewer on there. You see the depth of that storm sewer running from Second going uphill towards the parking lot. So you can get a sense what that is. That's 12-inch RCP through there. So not a lot. The rest of the things are just catch basins in the intersection. You can kind of see those dark lines. There's 3 catch basins, both sides on the south side and then the one that's at the northeast corner. And that's to pick up all the water that's coming through there. Kind of the next things I wanted to highlight, and we talked about this just briefly actually before the council meeting, but if you get into the sections, which I can't remember if those have it, but they're the cross-section sheets, so if you, those in the back, they look like this, so if you have those are the cross-sections. And that's what the road looks like in a profile view as you go down it. And what I just wanted to point out there is we have the same issue here as we have had on many existing streets, is we have the east side of the road, the curb line is actually quite a bit higher than the west side of the road. So in order to try and have a street that we have drainage from the center off to the edge, as well as trying to keep sidewalks at reasonable grades, we're having our cross slopes. Typically, if this was a brand new road, our cross slopes going from the center to the edges would be the same. Normally it's a 2 to 2.1% cross slope. Well, in this case, we're going all over the place in order to try and best match what's out there, because we have to tie into buildings where existing sidewalk is at, existing driveways are at, all those kinds of things. So we've done this before. 4th Street's a good example where it's going all over the place. Now, you can feel it a little bit as you drive it, and you've probably seen, but I don't think it's too noticeable, and it's anything, but the cross slopes on that street go the same way. They go up and down, and generally we try to make them a little bit longer so that's not too noticeable, but it's really the only way to do it. If we tie into the buildings, especially the east side, we'd have to lower everything. Now we got problems with tying right into buildings. Sometimes the brick fascia, we don't know what's below, and now we're starting to get into essentially building projects, if you will, and we try normally to avoid them because they tend to be a can of worms, so we don't like to get into that. So trying to tie in, plus we have entrances, steps, all those kinds of things that we need to try and tie into. So I just want to be real clear that, especially in that first block, there is a lot of movement that's going on that roadway. So I just, we've had issues, some concerns with that in the past, and I just wanted to really make sure I bring that to your attention. And you can look at that on some of these. We're trying to maximize, we want water to drain off the streets, otherwise if water doesn't drain off the streets, they deteriorate quicker than they're supposed to, but we also want our sidewalks not to be too steep on a cross slope, because then that becomes hazardous as it relates to ice. So we're trying to work everything out and get the best solutions we can through there and not move the road around too terribly much. So take a look at that. One question that I would have for you is if you think about along the parking lot area, there's a sidewalk and there's a short piece of just filled in with asphalt as it matches into the curb. It's only about 2 or maybe a little over 2 feet wide. The question would be is whether you would prefer to have that all uniform, all concrete, or do something similar to what's out there now. Once you start setting up the concrete, to me, I think it makes more sense just to finish it in concrete versus do it and then come back in another operation to go and lay bituminous in there. But I wanted to bring that to your attention as a question mark for you as we get to some final details on the project. So if you can kind of put that in the back of your mind to address for me. And I think that's about it as it relates to questions that I have. Oh.
By Tracy's.
Oh, yes. Sidewalk on the north end, which is in the first block, so the southerly block on the east side, because we're angling the street. Now, the question is, there's a couple questions here. One is, do we want to also angle the sidewalk so that it parallels the road? One issue with that is there is, in particular, I think it's just Tracy Ryan's lot, there's a retaining wall that butts against it. So to move it becomes some problematic as it relates to tying into that retaining wall. Kind of part B of that question is, well, if we leave it so it parallels the right-of-way, essentially where it is now, then we have a boulevard that's, it ranges anywhere from 0 up to, I think, about 5 feet. Do we want to perhaps consider slope paving that in concrete and not have it be grass? In those narrow ones, a lot of times they tend to be an issue, and the grass tends to not grow real well through there. So just another question for you as to how you foresee wanting to move forward with that. And then there's a tree issue as well. So those are the kind of the questions I would have for you on the design, as well as answering any that you might have here.
Okay. Does council have any questions?
I've got 3 questions, actually.
Okay.
And I'll word them all in one.
Okay. I'll try to remember them all.
2nd Street.
Yep.
Is there anything, now you were talking about there's some extra that goes into that intersection for future development? How much extra goes into that? My second part of the question is 2nd Street either reconstruction or repair on our CIP? And the third part, if we do any construction that would aid in that in the future, will that be adaptable at the time that street is reconstructed?
Okay. Couple of questions. Might be easiest to start maybe at the CIP question. And the CIP currently, that one is not in the current, is that right?
I'm not sure if it is either.
But,
This one we're working on, it looks like.
right. The one we're starting to look at revising the CIP, looking at all these utilities, looking at the ages, and
That's capital improvement.
Right. Yeah,
project.
capital improvement plan. And based upon just real preliminary looking at that area, it looks to be probably quite high on the list. It has some of the oldest utilities in there that haven't been replaced. The roads are, some of those are not the greatest. Curbs are out there, so it likely will be quite high on the list. So it'll be, when the CIP is revised, I think you will see it on there. So that's one. Let's see, the first part of the question you asked about, I think it was more of maybe a capacity question, and that was not, I'm sorry if I led you astray. It's not about a capacity issue, it's about just filling in that portion east-west so that that part is new and already done. Just like we did down here at Ash and Fourth, if you recall. It'd basically be the same thing.
Okay.
So we do all the utilities within the intersection. And the only kind of question there is it relates to the curb and the radiuses, and do we adjust them now to where we want them to be, or do we maybe adjust them later to where we want them to be? You know?
And does it add a lot to the cost of the project?
No, not really. We could, it's fairly minor, so those transitions I'm referring to would be fairly short. You know, we'd only have to do that in maybe like 10 feet, you know, on each leg, so it wouldn't be anything substantial, no. But your third part of your question
No, that
again
was
was, that was it?
That's
Okay.
the third, so, yeah. Appreciate it, thanks.
Any other questions? Concerns? I
I've
guess-
got one, but it's a six-part question. No, I'm just-
Yeah, wait, I gotta get my pen then.
I guess before we go into approving the resolution, we need clarification from the council on the storm sewer. I think, are we thinking about putting storm sewer in that southerly block?
Maybe,
Or,
maybe I could ask if everyone's clear, does everyone know what's there now, or do I need to describe it a little bit more? What's
basically it just
there?
runs overground, doesn't it? It comes
Well, there's a
parking
cut
lot.
through the curb. It's basically like a trough that goes underneath through
Right.
there. You know, so it's it's not very high and not very wide, and it, you know, it can plug up with debris and freeze thaw, and so it has been issues, but there's a cost to it. So it's a kind of a risk reward type of thing.
Oh, okay, we're going to have to clarify. You're talking about what we have right now
Correct.
is that little drain up by the parking lot
Correct.
onto the road.
Yep.
There's nothing else underground anywhere.
No.
And in fact, when we put this pipe in, really it's to service that parking lot.
That's
And
correct.
until you get some catch basins down at Second Street,
Correct. Correct.
nothing there at all.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for guidance, it's like, that seems like an awful lot of overkill for one little.
You know, it's, like I said, it's a risk, it's a maintenance issue. You know, sometimes it'll plug up, it'll cause some minor, you know, temporary flooding in those corners of the lot. But, so it's, you know, how big of an issue and versus the cost, so it's,
I did the quick math on that after you asked that question originally, and it's about 17,000 to just the homeowners total.
Well,
on
storm
that.
sewer is, 50%.
yeah. Well, another thing, if the council wished, I mean, we could, if you wanted to pull some of those costs out, that's another option that could be done as we get more towards real numbers on things. But, you know, I think you'd have to look at, do you really feel it's necessary to do, you know, versus the cost?
You know, basically, water's been running out of that down the road for probably the last 60 years, or ever since that drain was put in. And the other thing is, yeah, I could plug up with rubbish or anything, but that isn't gonna be any different than a catch basin does now that our guys are out cleaning up. And the freeze thaw issue is probably, what, 2 months out of the year?
Right.
I don't know if it's worth spending $20,000 for.
There will be some minor costs to basically put back what's there now. We'll have to, because you can't take it out and you'll reuse it.
Great, yeah.
But, you know, we're probably talking, you know, few thousand at the most versus, you know, so there will be some cost to that, but it won't be nearly as much.
So, I guess, what's the council's wishes as far as that point before we move to the next point on design, or do you want, or you need guidance on this right now, Keith?
Well, we need to move towards finalize these plans, and it's a question of how quickly you want to move forward, because we need to get to a bid opening that's not too terribly late in the season, but,
Right.
you know, if you're not ready and you want to wait till next time, I mean, it can be done, it's just, it delays things a bit, so.
As far as, and one thing is, the more we delay it, the trying to get a contractor in and get a decent bid on this to keep the prices low is gonna be tougher yet. As far as I'm personally, I think we can eliminate it.
I agree.
you
No,
know,
I
but-
agree. I
Okay.
don't think it's cost
So
effective.
by general consensus, we'll just eliminate that storm sewer part of it.
Okay.
Okay, Keith?
Yep, got it.
On the intersection, do we realign it where it should be? The cost figures basically are our costs.
I
It's
think,
not a property owner.
I think we put it where it belongs,
Where it
instead
should.
of doing it later and digging up what was otherwise new.
New
Yeah.
construction, right, okay.
Okay.
So general consensus on that one, that's what we're gonna do. The other part is boulevards, basically from, you know, do we just make it a wide sidewalk the full length from the, say, on Tracy Ryan's side of the corner bar?
Remember, there's kind of
down?
two things, one against the parking lot, and the other would be on in Tracy Ryan's. Now, remember, it'll have to be slope paving, because it'll be too steep to go like a straight grade from the walk up to their, like to the retaining wall. That would be too steep.
Right.
So it'd be a sidewalk and then a slope paving from there.
Right.
So think about if that concerns you. I mean, it can be done. It's done all the time, but if that's of a concern of yours, I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
How much of a percentage grade would it be if we just gradually sloped it from the back of the curb up to the sidewalk now, rather than that sharp drop off
I
or something?
can't tell you right here, but it would be quite a bit. If we went essentially to where the sidewalk is now, as it abuts the retaining wall and down, it'd be quite steep.
You would.
Yeah,
I was
we
just wondering
really
what
would,
kind
I
of
don't think we
volume.
could do that. We wouldn't want to do that.
Okay.
Were you planning on replacing that sidewalk?
That sidewalk is planned to be replaced,
Okay.
yes. So we're really kind of talking the sliver in between.
So really just to whether we want to put grass
Yeah, whether you
in it
want to
a
do
little
grass or whether you want to do, I would suggest if we're going to not make it grass, we probably should slope pave it in concrete.
And one of the things is that retaining wall is basically, according to the plans, is actually on city right away. Also, so.
It's up against the curb, yeah.
it's up-
Yeah.
so-
If you start tearing things down, it gets, we generally try to avoid those things on private property. It gets
Right.
kind of messy.
Right, so, as far as I'm concerned, we just you're not gonna get grass to grow there.
No.
And in certain parts, it's only gonna be a
Too
foot
small
wide, and to
space,
get
too
someone to
small.
go out there and trim it and mow it, it's not gonna happen
Okay.
for a foot wide strip. So,
Pave it.
Yep.
Yep.
general consensus, we just pave it.
And maybe part B of that would be against the parking lot, that strip that's currently asphalt.
Yeah.
You would want to continue that as concrete instead?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The tree would be a next issue?
Tree, I think, would be removed basically because we're gonna be deep enough, and if it's buckling the sidewalk anyway.
Well, I mean, it could be worked around, but, there'll be some minor damage to some roots, but it's not gonna be enough to severely damage it, but there's likely gonna be some occurrence of
And I know
issues with
the
it.
tree is on city property, but I think it was stated in the letter that they'd like to see it removed anyway. So the Jobneys would like to see it gone, so I wouldn't see a problem with,
I don't have a problem.
It provides some more longevity to our curb and our sidewalk.
yeah.
If it's sitting on top
Because
of mine.
basically, if we eliminate the boulevard and make it all concrete going out anyway,
Right.
we'd have to go around the tree.
Right. And that northerly block, just to be clear, I mean, we're going to look to salvage as much of the curb and gutter as we can. The west side in particular can, with the exception of where service goes through, that can be salvaged. The east side is going to be a little more difficult because that's where the sewer goes up, or excuse me, the service goes up. So that's going to be a little more nip and tuck whether we can save that. But that will be, the plan will be because I have to be 10 feet from the sanitary. So we're going to be getting close to it, but we're not that deep. So I think we can, if we have to, we can tell them to use a box and try and save that curb through there. But we'll that's the way I'm going to put the plans together to save the curb, unless you want to do something different, but the curb's in reasonable shape. It's just the road, the pavement itself is deteriorating quicker than it should have through there.
Okay. Any other questions or changes anyone would like to see? Otherwise, I'll be looking for a motion to approve Resolution 2016-22, approving the plans and specs and authorizing advertisement for bids.
I'll make the motion.
A motion by Diane,
Second.
second by Dave. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Now we will go back to 7A to approve the resolution 2016-21 ordering the improvement of Oak Street South, along with the changes that we did before. So, does staff have any comments?
I have nothing additional.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve resolution 2016-21 ordering the improvement of Oak Street South?
So moved.
A motion by Dave, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Heidi. Any other questions or comments? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Moving on, 7C, approve resolution 2016-23 approving amendment to CMF Black Dog loan.
The city, the EDA currently has an outstanding loan agreement with Central Minnesota Finishing in the amount of $107,241.65. The loan is currently under a subordination agreement. We entered into an agreement with First State Bank and Minnesota National Bank to subordinate and not receive any payments since June of 2009. That subordination agreement is now expiring, and the holder of the loan has requested the EDA discount the loan at 50%, which would allow him to obtain funding through the local bank to pay it off. The EDA did meet today at noon, and they have a recommendation at this time, which is to approve that amendment to the loan agreement. I also provided with you tonight a kind of a little bit of a background, because at the EDA meeting, they were asking some questions about how much money we loaned them, how much have they paid, how much principal, how much interest. And if you will see, the city originally constructed the spec building on the lot, and then we leased it to them, and then we sold it to them, and then obtained a mortgage on it. And so then they had been making payments. It was refinanced at one time, and there was some principal forgiven and interest at one time. But if you look at that, the original loan was $166,461.98. Principal that's been paid was $41,220, and principal forgiven was $18,000. So there was a balance due of $107. But also over that period of time, they paid $48,000 in interest. So the total amount that they've paid to the city in principal and interest over the years is $89,267. If the city does take the offer to have the loan paid off, the total payments to the city in the end will be $142,888. So kind of give you an idea of where we're at with that. I did talk with the bank, and they told me that in order for them to proceed with the refinancing of the business, that they would require the city either to accept that discounted payment or continue to subordinate and not expect to receive payments until the first loan is paid off. So that's kind of the two options that we had. The EDA voted today to recommend approving that amendment to the loan and accept the 50% as paid in full.
Questions?
We got a mortgage on the property.
Correct.
So we paid the original 166?
The city built the spec building.
City what?
The city built the spec building, and then we
Right.
leased it to them, and then we sold it to them.
All right.
And gave them credit for their lease payments, and that's why it's kind of an odd mortgage amount that we have.
And the mortgage was based on a value of the building,
Correct.
not necessarily what we had into it.
I do not have the exact amount that we had into it at that time, simply because the records that we have back in the early 90s, it was a bunch of receipts, and to add them all up, and I couldn't be certain that that was complete.
Okay. Typically, real estate would be valued at more than it costs to put up. So I mean, I'm kind of thinking that we weren't into it 166,000 anyway.
That
I
could
mean,
be
that'd be
true.
my guess. That would be the value of the building, but it didn't cost that much to put up.
That's what we sold it to them for,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Any other questions, comments? Just to let you know, it was not a unanimous vote at the EDA meeting based on the forgiveness. One comment is, do we really need to forgive it? This is money that we financed them to get off the ground. They've been in business a long time. And we've been basically, for the last 7 years, haven't received a payment toward our share. If we continue to be subordinate to the bank, are we out anything that we're already out now?
We're not getting any money on a subordination.
We are not.
If they continue to fail to make payments,
If
from our point, it
if we
doesn't
don't
mean
accept
anything.
the discount and accept that payment, then we would have to enter into a new subordination agreement. We would just carry that balance on our books at that amount for the next, I believe it's 15 years. And then in 15 years, we would be able to collect that money, or sooner if they paid what it would be based on is that once the bank is paid in full, then we would receive our money.
right? The
So,
bank is obviously restructuring this company's debt.
correct.
Theoretically, that's because they're struggling. I'm assuming that they were having troubles back in '09. They're probably still not doing real well.
There was 2 banks and a partner that has deceased, and the city that all had debt, kind of all combined and together into an agreement. And First State Bank is going to try to restructure that they will be the sole mortgage holder. And the partner, the city, and the other bank will be out of it. So that was kind of what the goal is here, is to restructure the debt and have one mortgage holder and one mortgage on the property.
Okay, where did the 50% come from? Who came up with the idea of getting, taking half?
When they first came to the city, they asked us to write off the entire balance.
Okay.
And the
That didn't
EDA,
go over real well.
the EDA countered back at 50% or continue to subordinate. And so they said, we'll take the 50%. And so then we took it to the EDA for final action today.
So 50% was the EDA's counteroffer to the bank?
Yes.
The bank has accepted that counteroffer, and here it is up
Correct,
here
and now we're bringing it to the council.
All right.
The one thing about the 50% offer from the EDA, as I recall, is that was before we found out there was 2 other parties involved in the loans. We didn't know there was another bank, and we didn't know there was another person, a deceased party. We didn't know about those 2 before we made the 50% agreement.
All
And
right.
that came up after the fact.
We knew about the partner, didn't we? We knew about the partner.
No.
Well, everybody was involved in the subordination agreement prior.
Right.
And so we didn't know for sure what his agreement is to settle up with his partner or the bank. I mean, that's their private. We're dealing directly with First State Bank. And this was what they needed from us in order for them to follow through with the restructuring. And so that's the premise that the EDA was going on.
So the money to put up the spec building, where did that come from originally?
Originally, the city had those funds through tax increment financing, funds that were in the tax increment district,
All right, so.
that we used that money to build the spec building,
For-
and then we sold the building to them on payments. So
Okay.
if we were to receive this money back, then it would go back into the TIF loan fund, and could be loaned back out to other individuals or companies.
All right, and the city presumably did that to encourage some development and some jobs.
It was the original
Apparently it
spec
worked.
building that was put out there to jumpstart the business park or the industrial park.
When did
Okay.
this originate?
In 1996 was when we had the first loan with them. We were working on it from 92 on to 94, 95, when they were talking about the lot and what we were going to build and what the building was going to be, et cetera.
You said they leased it for a while?
First, they were leasing it, and then they bought it.
Okay, and when it came time to purchase it, the lease payments were other monies that we received, or?
We were
credit
receiving lease payments, and then when they bought it, we gave them credit for the lease payments against the principal.
given? Okay,
So really, they were buying it from the get-go.
so it was an interest-free loan at that time for a while too then, because all we got was principal.
The original
Given
amount was going to
payments.
be $170,000, and then we gave credit to the lease payments, and that's why it was $166,400.
Okay,
They did have it broke out principal and interest, the lease payments. So they gave them credit for the principal portion, pro rata.
so you said if the money comes back, it'll go back into the TIF fund, can be used for future development encouragement?
Correct.
All right, and is there money in that fund now?
Yes, there is.
How much?
About
Roughly.
250,000.
Okay, so this is not a significant amount of money going in there. You've already got a pretty good chunk. Okay.
It probably doesn't sound significant, but $53,000 is
Yeah.
significant.
Well, I just say there's 250 there, so, you know, if there was 10,000 in that
Right.
right now, well, that's nothing to work with, so.
Yeah. Yeah. The issue I have with it is the city did everything they could to get them up and running. They've been going for 24 years. You know, and I just don't like the idea that taxpayer money was used for something that's been going that long, and you only get half of it back is kind of a slap in the face, in my opinion.
I agree.
But
Since,
I'm only one vote.
so since they bought this in 97, they've been paying property taxes.
Yes, they have.
That property tax has gone back into the TIF fund?
It did until the TIF district decertified. And so that money that was in that TIF district was kind of the money that we used, and we purchased the racetrack and felling trailer, et cetera.
Right. All right.
Any other comments, questions? Otherwise, I'll be looking
know.
for a motion.
I will make a motion to accept the EDA recommendation and take 50% and wash our hands of this mess.
Okay, we have a motion by Dave. Do we have a second? Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Keith. Any other questions, comments?
My only comment is we've been dealing with this for a long time, and I don't know if we'll ever get our money back. Maybe we better take what we can get it.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
I just feel it's unfortunate to see $53,000 at the taxpayer expense kind of flush down the toilet.
I agree with you, Heidi.
I won't say flush down the toilet, though, because we did get a business in town, and they've hired people for 24 years, so that's what it was for.
I think you also have to look at, you look at the present value of that money versus 15 years, if we get the whole 107 in 15 years, with the 53 now has got the same value as the 107 there. It's all going to depend on inflation, so you can't really determine that for sure. But that's something to look at as well. You know, and it could be sooner than that. You know, everything could go great and they'd want to pay us off, or they might not. I don't know, so.
Basically playing games with taxpayers' dollars. We have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries 4 in favor, 1 against. 7D, approved purchase of tax forfeited property.
This is another thing that was at the EDA meeting today. This is the parcel of land, and I have a picture of it on page 23. It's 8-acre parcel up in the north end of town. It's up for sale through the county. It's currently tax forfeit. And the proposal that came before the EDA, we have a company that is proposing that the city purchase that property, and then they would work with us on an economic development contract or business subsidy agreement to allow the construction of an apartment complex on that property. If the EDA and the developer then come to an agreement for development, the agreement would become before the city at a later date. And the EDA is set to meet with the developer. I talked to them after the meeting today. They want to come back as early as next week if the council is favorable to move forward with this. The price is set by the county at $40,000. So essentially what would happen is the city would purchase this property, then we would enter up into a contract with the developer to develop that property. And then we would reimburse ourselves through the taxes that it would be generated. And it has about a 3-year turnaround on the property taxes that would be generated from the parcel to pay ourselves back. So essentially for the first 3 years, the general taxes that we would receive in the city would be the same as they are right now. And after that 3 years, then the city's share of the taxes that were estimated by the county assessor would be $16,000 a year. So the Economic Development Authority met with the developers today, and they are recommending that the city move forward with the purchase of the tax forfeit property with the understanding that then they would be coming back before the EDA to negotiate agreement on the development. So that is the action that I have for you tonight, is to approve the purchase of that property.
Questions? Comments? I think it's $40,000 it's in property that's going to be developed here pretty quick. And we've actually, with the old golf course across the road and possible development going on there, it's just going to boom and make that better for our tax base. So I think this is a start. Is there any other comments or questions? If not, do I have a motion to approve the purchase of the tax forfeited property?
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion by Diane, second?
Second.
Second by Dave. Any other comments or questions? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7E, approved classification of tax forfeited property as non-conservation.
In addition to that parcel that we just talked about that is being offered or up for sale, there's 4 additional parcels in the city that the county is requesting the city classify as non-conservation and allow them to sell them. I have put them on your packet by address, and also the price that the county has set, and then 2 of them have some outstanding special assessments. So the assessments would be known to the buyer. In addition, the parcel on 2nd Street South has a structure on it that's been condemned, and that would also have to be made known. So the action that we are requesting on behalf of the county is to approve the classification of the properties as non-conservation and allow them to sell them on the tax forfeited land sale.
Questions? Comments? The one on 2nd Street, is that the one right across from Frederick's?
Yes.
Okay. I thought at one point we had someone buying that.
Well, we did, except the seller was having some issues with the transfer of property as it related to some assistance that they were receiving, and they just decided to let it go back to the county or back to the state.
Okay.
Was there a purchase agreement also on the 606 Birch Street South?
That fell through. But you're right, that's the same property.
That's
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Do I have a motion to approve classification of properties as non-conservation?
so moved.
Motion by Heidi, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dave. Any other comments or questions? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7F, approve resolution 2016-24 supporting or opposing detachment.
Okay, Jim and Cheryl Miller own a parcel of land on Beltline. It's at 1128 10th Street South, and I do have in your packet a map of the property and some other information. They are petitioning to be detached from the city. Staff has met with the Millers on various occasions regarding future development of the property for residential purposes. There is a roadway and utility easement along the southerly line of the property to the city limits on the west end. The easements for future access of utilities to the land to the west, which is currently being farmed but is zoned commercial by the township. A petition to vacate that easement was heard previously by the council but was denied due to a future possible need to access the township property and to provide an avenue to loop utilities through that property. The procedure for detachment is outlined in the attached excerpt from Minnesota statutes. It explains if both jurisdictions support the proposal, the administrative law judge shall grant it. If both oppose the detachment, the judge shall deny it. In any other event, a hearing before the administrative law judge or mediation is required. Mr. Miller has approached the township and asked for a resolution supporting the detachment, and he's requesting that the city do the same. You will see that the property is a triangle piece with one side adjacent to the township parcel currently zoned commercial. It's served by, there is municipal electric and there is a water main to the corner of the property. Municipal sewer is not on the property, is located across Beltline Road. The parcel is 6.31 acres. However, this does include county right-of-way. The net parcel size is approximately 3.3 acres. If it does detach from the city, then access to that municipal water and sewer would not, or municipal water would not be available. The issues resulting in the request are mostly zoning related. The owner proposes to construct an accessory building on the property prior to a residential unit, which is not permitted on residential property. The building is larger than currently allowed by zoning, which is 1,200 square feet, and the type and style of siding is not allowed on residentially zoned property. The proposed location of the structure was, he was having difficulty meeting the setback from the easement, and he has requested that the public utility waive the hookup requirements to water and sewer and allow him to install a private well and septic system. And I think the utility is meeting on March 14th unless they've already met on that. I did have 2 resolutions for you in the packet because I didn't know which way you would go. Depending on the resolution chosen, you would want to do any additional findings. I did include the application that he put in. I have the Minnesota statutes regarding detachment, a copy of the city limits, the easement, the city zoning, and the township zoning, so if you have any questions. And then also, I do have the one resolution opposing it, and then I have one resolution supporting it, so you need to determine which it would be. Mr. Miller is here tonight if you have any questions of him, or if you have any questions of me as you proceed.
Questions from council? One of the things is if we did allow this to happen, it was brought to my attention, that easement would still be in place even if it went back into the township, right?
Yeah, it's an easement in favor of the public.
Right.
Yeah, so the easement would still be there.
So that easement would still be there, which the township could allow them to build right on next to it or right on top of it?
The township has different setbacks than we do.
Right.
So I wouldn't imagine they'd let him build on the easement. But I guess that's something he would have to take up with the township.
The other thing is if we would have any future development back there where we'd have to extend or say we're going to tar that stretch of road, that part of that easement is going to be in the township. Is the township going to be willing to pay for their share of that road getting tarred if we decide to do it, which is going to cause another issue? Because I know up on top of Hoboken Hill on Manette Road, half of it's in the township, half of it's not. Whenever there's any repair work up there, the township hasn't been favorable to doing any tarring up there because they don't want to pay for any of it. Are we going to put ourselves in that same situation if this goes back into the township record? Just putting it out there for food for thought. One of the things, you know, I've talked to Jim earlier when we were talking about the easement vacation or getting rid of that. They bought the lot, they knew the easement was there, and I think, as far as I know, they also knew what the zoning regulations were for building. Had to have the house, unless I'm wrong, but I think, you know, you knew what the stipulations were. Is that, okay, not to put it lightly, it's kind of like, okay, I want to be here, but I don't like the rules we got to play by, so I want to go in here so I can play by a different set of rules. I don't know if that's the proper way to do things. We kind of did it with, we did it at the top of the hill with one property, and I already regret ever voting on, personally, ever letting that ever happen.
That was different. That building was already there.
Right.
There's
But
nothing there.
that was a different set of rules. They played the game with them, and then they came to us after the fact. Now it's the other way around. So I'm not so certain that I'm in favor of it,
I'm
but
not.
I'm only one vote, and
Yeah.
I'm looking for
Well,
other.
I think we work for the city. Is it in the interests of the city to shrink? I don't think so. Cities don't shrink unless they're dying.
One of the things that I also, and I asked Vicki, and she wasn't sure, she hasn't been able to find it yet, was normally when a property from the township comes into the city has to pay the township for how many years their share of the property taxes. Is the township going to pay us for the share of property taxes?
That
If it
would
goes
be,
the other way.
that'd be the requirement. I mean,
Well, we don't know if that's actually in statute or not.
no, they probably don't expect it to go the other way.
Right. Of course, they're gonna say yes, expecting the tax value, and they're gonna get tax based. But if they find out they gotta pay us for how many years their share, maybe, that they wouldn't be quite so quick to say yes. It's one thing that I'd like to, for future, find that out.
Did you put that question to?
I asked Vicki that, yes.
Yeah, we talked about it this evening, and there's a lot of things in the new detachment law about if you issued bonds and they're related to that, they have to pay. But what happens in a detachment now, you're not making the final decision. If you support it and the township supports it, it's automatic by the administrative law judge. But if you do not support it, then it goes to the next step, and it goes to the administrative law judge, and they may order mediation. And that's where it's determined whether or not this is going to happen, whether or not they have to pay us or how that works. So they've kind of added that new step into the detachment process. It's something new in the statute in the last couple of years. So that's, at that point, the mediation and the administrative law judge, they apportion costs for the judge to come up. They apportion those types of costs, and they would also determine whether or not the township had to reimburse the city for lost tax base at that time.
Okay, any other comments or questions? If not, I'll be looking for a motion to either support or oppose the detachment.
I'll make a motion to oppose it based on the fact that the property is served by municipal water and municipal electric. It's served by a municipal street, and the request is based solely upon issues related to the proposed development contrary to zoning requirements for residentially zoned property. So my motion would be to oppose it.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second by Dave. Any other questions or concerns? Hearing none, call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7G, approved mayoral proclamation for National Service Day.
But no property related to this one?
Yeah, we've kind of been getting that, haven't we?
Yeah.
So this proclamation was brought to me by the mayor. On April 5th is Mayor and County Recognition Day for National Service. On this date, volunteers are recognized for their service to the community. And the one this year that we're offering or having special recognition is the Foster Grandparent Program that serves Sauk Centre. And we do have 12 individuals who have dedicated their service to the program by dedicating over 4,000 hours at the Holy Family School, Pumpkins and Monkeys Preschool, Sauk Centre Elementary, Sauk Centre Secondary, and West Central Education District. Those people are Myrna Bauman, Anna Mae Dieters, Rose Eklund, Lynn Janowick, Judy Odegaard, Roberta Olson, Betty Stocker, Susan Nelson, Marilyn Eulenkamp, Betty Van Havermaet, Friedo Vanislow, and Harold Nelson. And so we do have the proclamation that is in the packet, and the mayor is asking that you approve the proclamation recognizing volunteers for service on the Mayor and County Recognition Day for National Service, which is April 5th.
Questions, comments?
Great idea.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve proclamation recognizing volunteers for service on Mayor and County Recognition Day for National Service, which is April 5th?
So moved.
We got a motion by Keith,
Second.
and a second by Dave. Any other comments? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. We have no unfinished business. New business, Highway 71 reconstruct.
In December of 2015, Minnesota District 3 adopted their 10-year capital highway investment plan. State Trunk Highway 71 through Sauk Centre is now in year 8 of the 10-year plan for reconstruct. This is in the year 2024. The state is now focusing more on repair and reconstruct and less on new highways, and that's how their capital improvement plan got juggled. Once we advance to year 5, we'll be assigned a program manager, although he's already called me last week, so I'm in year 8, year 5, I guess. They will be assigned to the project and design will begin. City staff will be in contact with representatives from MnDOT District 3 discussing potential issues to be considered during the planning of the project. We've been talking with them for past several years, and we'll continue to look forward as far as possible in order to identify potential funding that may be available. This will be a topic of discussion for the Operations Committee, the Public Utility, and other groups as we move forward. In talking with MnDOT, it'll be similar to the Beltline project where they will have the street and we'll have the utilities. Our city engineer will be marrying his design to their design, but there's a lot of different issues that we have to consider when you're going down Main Street. And we're talking all the way from the freeway to the north end of town where it goes around the corner. So we talked all the way from redesigning that intersection on the north end all the way to the freeway entrance, and including things such as looking at that Wobegon Bridge, having sidewalks on both sides of Main Street all the way to the Holiday gas station, all those kinds of issues that we're going to have to be talking about. And of course, the aging infrastructure and what do we do downtown and all those things. We've already had preliminary conversations on those, and that'll all be coming back to you as we move forward. But like, it's 8 years out, and 8 years sounds like a long ways away, but it'll be here before you know it. So we'll be planning for that. It gives a little bit of time to find money.
One of the things is for considering a little over a year ago, we weren't even on the 25-year outlook for doing Main Street. And now we're in 8 years, which has helped considerable.
Yeah, and how that happened is they started this comprehensive investment management strategy some years ago, and I can kind of remember the time frame because it's when Mayor Kirchhoff was in Missouri, so when Dennis Ricken was being the acting mayor. That's kind of the time frame where they started this. And then MnDOT kind of took an approach where some of these bypasses and new highway projects were kind of shelved, and the fixing existing infrastructure got moved up the list, and that's how that got shuffled. So we just maybe had a little bit of good timing. Some people made some phone calls, and we've had enough people talking about it that we got recognized, and now it's time. And we're the last part of 71 that hasn't been fixed. They're going from 71 from the truck stop south this summer. So, but
I know at one point, Vicki and Mayor Ricken at the time visited with MnDOT, and we were the only ones there for our district.
for our highway, yeah.
For our highway, so it was, they got full attention at that point in time. And then last year I talked to the MnDOT commissioner himself at the state level, asked him what we could do. And then Paul Anderson, we've been talking to, and he's the one that called me and told me that we were with the 8 years. And 8 years, like Vicki says, sounds like a long ways away, but in 8 years, we're gonna have to come up with a lot of money to cover a lot of different aspects and find out what we want. So that's probably just the proper amount of time, because if it's any closer, we're gonna have a lot of extra special meetings to cover it. But at least we're on the radar, and it's looking up as far as I'm concerned. So, but any other comments or questions about that?
No.
All right, then we will move on to the consent agenda. which we only have the schedule of claims of unpaid claims of $67,090.90, paid claims of $485 for a total of $67,575.90. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Heidi, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Diane.
Three of us.
Call the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. We have no informational items. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Dave, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Heidi. Call the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Meeting adjourned.
Good job.